Montana Territory, 1870. The wind screamed across the plains like a widow mourning her dead. Dust swept through the parched cemetery beside the old mission church, where a battered cross leaned crookedly against the cracked stone. A lone rider approached, his coat flapping, hat pulled low, rifle strapped behind the saddle like a promise. Colt Merrick dismounted with the weight of a man who no longer felt the point of standing tall. 35. Broad-shouldered. Jaw like a carved bluff. His eyes held the gray of ashes, not from age, but what he'd buried. He stepped into the church and found her already there, standing straight despite the cold. She didn't look like a bride. Clara Bennett, no older than 21, wore a faded dress, the hem ragged and dust-stained. Her hands, folded at her stomach, trembled once, but stilled when she noticed him watching. Her eyes were sharp and wide, like a deer poised to flee, but behind them was something else, fire smothered by too many winters. The preacher cleared his throat and opened his worn Bible. "This ain't love, Miss Bennett," Colt said before the old man could speak. "It's survival." "I know," she replied, voice even but quiet. "I'm not expecting roses." No one laughed. Not even the preacher. The vows were spoken like terms of a deal, colder than the wind that rattled the shutters. No kisses. No blessings. Only a scratch of a pen on paper and a thin gold ring that looked too bright for her weathered hand. Colt watched her closely. She didn't flinch when he placed it on her finger. That told him more than anything. They left together in silence. The ride to the ranch was long. The land stretched empty, save for charred trees from a lightning fire years back. Colt didn't offer conversation. Clara didn't ask for any. When they arrived, the ranch looked as worn as its owner. A crooked barn, a sagging fence line, and a house built solid, but unloved. "I sleep in the front room," Colt said, tossing her a key to the rear quarters. "Chamber pot's under the bed. Stove's temperamental. Don't touch the pantry." "I can cook," she replied. "I didn't say you couldn't. Just don't touch the pantry." It wasn't kindness. It was control. But Clara said nothing. Days passed in brittle rhythm. She rose before dawn, swept the porch, boiled coffee thick enough to chew. Colt worked the range, fixing fences and checking traps. They rarely spoke, save for short commands or grunted acknowledgments. But Clara noticed things. Like how he never entered the back bedroom, never spoke of his past. How he stood in the barn at night staring at the rafters as if expecting ghosts. She tried to warm the space. Washed curtains. Repaired torn linens. Rearranged the pantry so it made sense, flour beside cornmeal, sugar above salt. He moved everything back. She said nothing. But her hands tightened around the broom that night like she was wringing a snake's neck. A week later, she sang. Just a hum, low and melodic, while sweeping the porch. An old hymn, gentle and haunting. Colt stopped stacking firewood and listened, brow furrowing like it offended him. "You can stop that," he said. "I wasn't singing for you." That shut him up. One evening, he brought home a foal, barely breathing, bitten by something wild. Its leg dangled wrong, eyes rolled back. He dropped it near the barn and muttered, "Won't last the night." Clara knelt beside it, ignoring the blood. "It's in shock," she whispered, brushing the matted mane. "It's a waste. You don't know that. It's got pain in every breath. So do most things that live." That night, Colt saw her through the window. Wrapped in a blanket, she sat beside the foal with a lantern, dabbing wounds with cloth, whispering as if her voice could hold death back. By morning, the foal still breathed. Colt stared, jaw tight. "Luck. No. Care." He said nothing. But he fed the creature that evening with her, neither of them speaking. A storm rolled in that week. Black clouds gathered like an army across the plains, and Colt knew the signs. He saddled up to hunt before it broke. "I'll be back before sundown," he told her. "Don't go," Clara said, surprising them both. "It's not safe. I need meat. We need you alive." He paused. Only for a second. Then rode off. The storm came sooner than expected. By nightfall, snow and wind lashed the house like punishment. Clara shoved towels into the cracks of the window panes, stoked the stove until her face burned, and pulled every blanket onto the floor for insulation. The roof groaned. The barn howled. The animals grew restless. Something moved outside. She lit a lantern and stepped into the dark. She saw it, low, fast, hungry. A wolf, ribs showing, stalking near the coop. Her heart hammered. She ran for the rifle Colt kept above the door, slipped on the ice, scrambled to her feet, and fired into the air. The wolf fled. She stood shaking, barefoot, nightgown soaked. But the chickens lived. When Colt returned the next day, limping and frostbitten, he found the porch cleared of snow, the barn unburned, and his wife asleep near the fire with the foal curled beside her like a loyal dog. He watched her quietly. Something shifted. That evening, he ate her stew without complaint. "You stitched up that rabbit pretty fine," he said, voice gravel soft. "I've sewn worse." He nodded. "Storm knocked out the fence near the east line. I'll fix it tomorrow. I'll help." He looked at her then, really looked. "You're 5 months pregnant." "I still got 2 hands." The silence held for a moment too long. Then he said, "Don't touch the pantry." This time, she smiled. "Too late." They both almost laughed. Later that night, as wind whispered through the cracks in the wood, Colt stood at the window, watching the stars flicker through thinning clouds. She joined him, her belly brushing his arm. "You married me for the winter," she said. "That's fine. I'm not looking for love." "I don't have any left to give," he said. She studied him. "You don't need to love me, Colt. Just don't fail him." He turned. "Him?" She placed his hand, slow, deliberate, against her swollen belly. "The boy I'm carrying." He froze. Then slowly, his fingers curled as if trying to feel something beyond the skin. "You might not need a wife, Mr. Merrick," she said, voice soft as snowfall, "but you've got one anyway." And he didn't pull away. Not this time. Outside, the wind had quieted. For now. The thaw came late that spring, stubborn frost clinging to the earth like a secret unwilling to let go. Snowmelt turned the ground to mud, and the rivers swelled with the weight of winter's grief. On the Merrick ranch, the land groaned as if waking from a long, hard sleep, and so did Colt. He rose earlier now. Checked the livestock before Clara asked. Sharpened tools he hadn't touched in years. When the foal stumbled onto its feet one morning, he stood beside it longer than needed, hand brushing its mane in silence. Clara watched from the porch, her belly rounder now, a shawl wrapped tight. He didn't speak of it, but he didn't avoid her gaze anymore either. Still, there were things he kept buried. Late one evening, while she prepared a stew and sang under her breath, gentler now, unafraid, Colt sat at the table cleaning his revolver. The fire crackled. A soft peace had settled, but it was fragile, like thin ice over deep water. "Your shoulder," Clara said, not looking up. "You wince when you lift the axe." "It's fine." "You got shot?" He looked at her. For a moment, the fire threw shadows over his face, carving out old scars time hadn't erased. 3 years ago, he said. Ambush outside Cold Hollow. Sioux war party. They'd lost too much and didn't care who bled for it. I bled. Alone? He didn't answer. She stirred the pot. "You fought for the Union?" He gave a tight nod. "Wore the blue. Thought it made me righteous." "Did it?" "No." She didn't press further. That night, after she slept, Colt sat outside the barn staring into the dark, rifle across his lap. The wind was warm, but his skin crawled. He wasn't imagining it. Tracks, strange ones. Shallow prints in the soil near the creek. Hoof marks that didn't match their horses. The latch on the smokehouse had been moved. Small signs, but he'd spent enough nights at war to know when someone was watching. He didn't tell Clara. Instead, he fortified the fence line, moved supplies into the cellar, and cleaned every weapon. She noticed how he checked windows twice, loaded bullets with too much care, stepped outside 3 times before sleep. "What are you expecting?" she finally asked. He shook his head. "Not sure yet." But his eyes had gone hard again. One morning, while mending a harness near the barn, he heard Clara cry out. He dropped everything. She stood near the coop, pale, holding a torn piece of cloth. Stained. The kind of red that never belonged in daylight. "Someone was here," she whispered. "Too close." Colt took the cloth. A scrap of bandana. Torn and bloodied. He recognized the pattern. He knew exactly who it belonged to. That night, he told her. His brother, Wade Merrick, once rode with him, same eyes, same laugh, but none of the conscience. After the war, when land was scarce and peace scarcer, Wade took to raiding homesteads with a gang of ex-soldiers who didn't care what flag they'd bled for. Colt tried to stop him once, told him to walk away. Wade pulled a gun instead. Colt didn't kill him. But maybe he should have. "He knows where I am," Colt said, staring into the fire. "He always did." Clara's fingers tightened around her cup. "Will he come back?" "Not alone. And not for a visit." She didn't cry. She didn't panic. She stood, poured the rest of the coffee into the sink, and said, "Then we prepare." They trained at dawn. Colt handed her a rifle and taught her to load and shoot without blinking. Her aim was poor at first, but she didn't flinch. By the 3rd day, she hit a tin can clean off a fence post. He showed her how to reset traps, how to recognize fresh boot prints, how to tell the sound of a deer from a man creeping too quiet. She learned fast. One afternoon, they set out to check the north ridge, where the fence had sagged. As they climbed, Clara paused, breath short, hand on her side. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded, but her knuckles had gone white. He helped her sit, fetched water, his hand lingering too long at her back. She looked at him differently now, not as a stranger, not quite as a husband, but something between, a tether formed in fire and frost. "I lost a baby once," she said, breaking the stillness. "Before you. Before the trade. My mother sold me to settle a debt. The man, he didn't last the winter. I buried them both." Colt looked away, jaw tight. He didn't speak. But when she stood again, he held her elbow until her footing steadied. That night, Clara found him in the barn, staring at the rafters again. She climbed the ladder, stood beside him in the hayloft. "Did someone hang themselves up here?" she asked. He flinched. "How'd you know? You look at it like it's a grave marker." "My father," he said quietly. "After the war. Couldn't live with what he did. Or didn't do." She didn't speak. Just sat down, arms around her knees. "Wade saw it," Colt said after a while. "He was only a boy. Said it made a man out of him. He's been trying to kill that memory ever since." "And you?" "I ran. Joined the cavalry. Thought if I killed enough rebels, I'd feel something again." "Did it work?" "No." Silence filled the loft like smoke. Then she said, "Maybe we're both buried men, Colt. But that don't mean we have to stay in the ground." He didn't look at her. But he didn't walk away either. 3 nights later, it happened. Clara woke to the distant sound of hooves. Faint. Measured. Wrong. She rolled from bed, heart pounding, and reached for the rifle. Colt was already dressed, boots on, eyes like flint. He moved to the window, peered out. For riders, keeping their distance. Watching. "Wade," he said. "You sure? No one else would toy with me like this." They waited. At dawn, the riders were gone. But a fresh carcass hung from the fence post, a rabbit, throat slit, a red bandana tied around its neck. Clara looked away, bile rising. Colt burned it without a word. "They're coming," he said. "And they want me afraid." She looked him dead in the eyes. "Are you?" He didn't answer. But when she placed her hand over his heart, she could feel it pounding like a war drum. "You don't have to love me, Colt," she whispered again, "but don't leave me to fight alone." He met her gaze. Held it. "I won't." And for the first time, she believed him. The storm broke just after midnight. Thunder cracked like cannon fire over the ridges, lightning flared against the sky, casting the plains in a strobe of white and black. Rain came down in sheets, wild and punishing, drumming on the roof of the homestead with the fury of judgment. In the barn, Colt stood at the open loft door, rifle in hand, eyes fixed on the distant tree line. "They'll use the storm," he said. "Ride in when they think we'll be half-blind and running." Clara stood beside him, drenched despite the shawl tight around her shoulders. Her fingers curled around the stock of her rifle, steady now, no tremble left. She wasn't the girl who'd been traded for a sack of grain. Not anymore. A flicker of torchlight moved among the trees, too slow for a storm shelter. Intentional. "They're here." Colt gave her one look. Then they moved. They'd prepared, dug trenches, stashed extra cartridges, laid dry powder in the smokehouse wrapped in oilcloth. Colt had even cut a back exit in the barn, just in case. He led Clara to the root cellar, the one with a crawl hole to the woodshed, and handed her a lantern and spare rounds. "You stay here, till I draw them out. If I'm not back." "No," her voice cut sharper than the wind. "We stay together." He hesitated, then gave her a grim nod. A whistle pierced the air. Then another. It wasn't a bird. Gunfire followed. The first shots came from the south. One shattered a porch beam. Another bit into the side of the barn. Colt moved like instinct, returned fire once, then ducked low. Clara followed, crouched, every nerve alight. From the darkness, a voice echoed. "Colt Merrick. That you still alive, brother?" "Wade." Colt's grip tightened. The sound of that voice, half drawl, half venom, dragged up years of blood and bone and shame. "I figured you'd die choking on your pride," Wade called. "But you found yourself a wife instead? A little convenience to keep the bed warm?" Clara's jaw set. Colt looked at her, and for a split second, something passed between them that wasn't fear. "Come out, Colt," Wade continued. "Come out and meet your sins." Colt rose halfway, eyes squinting through rain and trees. He caught sight of Wade now, leaner than he remembered, but still wearing that devil's grin, soaked to the bone beneath a long duster. 3 men flanked him, each armed, eyes glinting like wolves in firelight. Colt fired once. Hit the pine near Wade's boot. "That's the greeting I get?" Wade barked a laugh. "Shame. But all right then. Let's burn it down." They came fast. Colt turned and shoved Clara toward the back of the barn. "Go. Now." They ran. Bullets punched holes in the wood. Sparks flew as lead struck the anvil inside. Horses screamed, spooked in their stalls. Colt turned once, shot a man who'd broken through the doors, caught him in the shoulder, sent him reeling. Then the fire began. They tossed a lantern into the hay. The flames spread like breath catching on kindling. Smoke filled the rafters. Colt grabbed Clara's hand. Together they burst through the back exit, stumbling into the rain-soaked dark. The wind shifted. Rain smothered part of the blaze, but it was already too late. The barn groaned behind them, beams glowing like hot steel, and the animals thrashed in panic. They didn't have time to save them. Colt led her toward the ridge, where they dug the hide trench. They dropped into it, mud cold and slick, rain pouring off their hats and dripping from lashes. Clara struggled for breath, coughing from smoke, her hands shaking but still clutching the rifle. "They'll follow," she rasped. "Let 'em," Colt growled. "This ends tonight." They didn't wait long. The crunch of boots approached. One, maybe two men. Wade had split them up to search faster. Colt motioned. Clara nodded. A flash of movement. Colt rose, shot once, missed, and drew fire. The second man came at him from the side, too close. Clara fired. Her shot rang clean through the storm. The man dropped. She didn't blink. Colt stared at her, then nodded once. No words. The final two riders came hard across the ridge, spurred by Wade's shouting fury. Clara ducked low as gunfire screamed past. One bullet grazed her arm. She bit down on the pain, blood dripping into the mud. Colt moved with the kind of violence that had once made him feared. He tackled one rider off his horse, slammed him into the ground, wrestled the weapon away and used the butt of his rifle to end the struggle in seconds. Then came Wade. He dismounted like a man who'd already won. Pistol in one hand, torch in the other, smile wide and cruel. "I should have killed you when I had the chance," he said. "Likewise," Colt muttered. Wade raised his pistol. "But now I get to do it proper. You and your whore of a bride." Clara stood then, behind Colt, rifle raised. Bleeding, breath ragged, but unshaken. "Don't call me that," she said. Wade looked at her, and laughed. Colt moved first. They clashed like thunder, Wade firing once, grazing Colt's leg. Colt roared, rushed forward, slammed into him. The pistol fell. They grappled in the mud, fists breaking skin, boots slipping, knees digging for purchase. Wade reached for a knife. Colt slammed his head against a stone. And for a moment, all was still. Colt stood over his brother, chest heaving. Wade was conscious but beaten, bloodied, wheezing. "You always were soft," Wade spat. Colt looked down. Then turned away. Clara stepped forward. Held her rifle steady. "You come back here again," she said, voice raw, "I won't miss." Wade grinned through blood. "That's my kind of woman." Colt didn't look back as he walked away. By morning, the fire had gutted the barn. The animals were gone. The roof had collapsed inward, smoke still rising in lazy ghosts. Clara stood by the ruins, arm bandaged, skin gray with exhaustion. Colt walked up behind her, silent. "It's all gone," she said. "No," he replied. "What mattered stayed." She turned to him. For the first time, there was no mask between them. "You could have killed him. I've buried enough of my blood." She nodded, slow, as if that answer carried more than it seemed. The wind shifted. The clouds began to break. Light touched the edge of the field, golden and soft. "Colt," she whispered, voice breaking, "I think the baby's coming." His breath caught. He moved fast then. No panic, just purpose. Guided her to the house. Boiled water. Held her hand. The pain came hard, then harder. Hours passed. And at the edge of that long night, a cry rose into the broken dawn. Small. Fierce. Alive. Colt stared at the child like he was seeing sunlight for the first time. Clara smiled through her tears. "He's yours. If you want him." Colt looked at her, really looked. And something in him finally let go. He nodded. "I do." The wind rattled the charred skeleton of the barn. The rain had passed, but the earth still held the scent of smoke and change. Outside, the world was broken and burned. Inside, it was beginning again.